How many of you have taken a flight in the last few years? 2 years, 3 years, doesn't matter. Think for a moment. Now try to remember how long before that flight you started looking for that flight, like dates and destination and things like that. And I guess it was probably days, weeks, or even months before. And the reason for that is because when many industries and airlines the same, that we need time, we need to look for different options. And that time tends to be really longer compared to the physical experience in itself. So that's why many companies do digital transformation, because many of the interactions that we have with companies are with the digital channels, right? So my name is Carlos Hernandez. I'm the head of Cloud and SRE. And the story that I want to share with you has to do with our last approach, something that we began about 5 years ago. But first of all, some quick intro to LATAM. LATAM is one of the biggest airlines in South America. We operate about 150 different destinations, different countries. And in terms of flights, we operate about 1,400 flights every day. So it's a big operation. Half of those flights are actually in Brazil. And if we talk a little bit about passengers, we transport about 75 to 80 million passengers every year, right? So that's a little bit of context of the company. Now, the story that I want to share with you is the transformation that we started 5 years ago, as I mentioned. But first, let me share something. Let me share what typically happens within companies. When we see transformations like digital transformation, it's pretty common to find this happen in IT or the technology organization, whatever names that we may use. And that's fine, because many of the changes have to happen within the technology organization because of these digital interactions. Now, we decided to do something different. Even though LATAM Airlines is a big company, we decided to take the business unit, the commercial business unit, and the IT, part of the IT organization, and we merged them into a single new organization that we call e-business. And this e-business is the way how we have been transforming. Again, this is just the first step. We have many of the different business units, but this was the approach we decided to take. Now, putting people together from two different backgrounds, different mindset isn't easy. It's actually really hard. But one thing we decided to put here as a condition was to have for everyone, not just leaders, but all the people inside this organization, the exact same goals. Or it's a shared set of goals, so that all the people was pursuing exactly the same idea, the same incentives. Right? So the story that I want to share with you has to do with this transformation. Now, given that we started 5 years ago, the first thing that we needed to do was to build these new capabilities. Remember, the idea was to replace our digital experience with a new one. So these represent that transitions that took about 2.5, maybe 3 years. So all the red bars represent the traffic that we were receiving on our previous experience, and the blue bars represent the traffic on the new one. Now, all this transition, if you see here, started about May 2020. It was actually a really complicated year. This was the year of the pandemic, so it was a hard time in many different aspects. But anyway, during the first, I think 4, maybe 5 months, after we roll out, our first country was in Ecuador, we realized that our ability to detect incidents, our ability to identify problems or issue was really bad. I mean, it wasn't enough. And we started working on getting back on track somehow. And at some point, maybe at the end of 2020, we would have many different dashboards, many different panels like this. I wouldn't say that we felt comfortable like the guy that you have in front of you, but anyway, we felt good enough, confident enough that we could detect things if something bad happened. Even after having all these different dashboards and panels and monitors, we would still receive from people that we knew, a friend, maybe a colleague or someone, whatever, a message like this, complaining about something, saying that the website was not working or the app was taking too long to load and things like that. So for some reason, not critical incident, but small failures were happening during the day. A small failure, a given customer affected, and then another one, and then another one. So that was frustrating. It was really frustrating for all the teams and obviously for the customers. So we needed something different. And at this point, we decided to introduce something called Failed Customer Interaction, or FCI. And FCI wasn't an idea that we created, right? It was actually a concept and an implementation that the PayPal team did back in 2018 when they had a very similar issue on their payment platform, right? So a small issue that were happening during the day. And it was basically the same thing that was happening to us. So we decided to introduce this tool. Now, let me explain you a little bit what this failed customer interaction is. Imagine for a moment something like this. And this is our homepage. This is exactly what we call our search box. And here you can select a given origin, a destination, a date for the flight, numbers of passengers, and then at some point you will click that button. And for us, for every single button or link like this, we defined a given action name. In this case, the action name is flight selection offer search. So this is the interaction that we wanted to track. Let me give you another example. In this case, imagine you have already displayed the different flights and you have one link to see the detail of that itinerary. Again, another action name with a different name. So for every single button or link, we have a given action name. For every one of those action names, there is a single interaction on the UI. So it's a one-to-one mapping or relationship, right? So that's pretty much the way how this is the basis for the tool that we call failed customer interaction. Okay, so that's the idea of failed customer interaction and how we mapped. But there was something else that was happening in our system. At that time, we had already built more than 500 different services. And what you see here is our architecture. It is a layered architecture where every one of those different boxes with different colors represent a different service. And the lines, the purple lines between them, represent different interactions. So it was a complex distributed system that there was no way for us to fully understand it. So we needed a way to map the different interactions on the UI or on the front end to the service that was causing the error. And also, on average, every time someone would click a button on the UI or a link, we knew that about 40 different services were also called at the same single interaction. So it was a pretty complex system, and we needed a way to map what was happening behind. So when you see this failed customer interaction tool in a daily basis, how the teams were using it would look something like this. This is after the data being ingested, all the different steps that the data need to travel to at the end up in a panel like this. So teams, imagine in a daily, imagine in a metrics ceremony where they're looking into the data for the FCIs, they would see something like this. On the right, you see all the different services that were being that are generating different failures that are affecting a given action name. Imagine the button that I showed before, maybe the link or maybe the button. So all the different services that are part of that single interactions are here on the right. Now on the left, the different graphs or the different bars represent how much of the failures were introduced for a given service. So in this case, what you can see is that this particular service is the one that is affecting the action name that the team may have selected. So you can have a completely different conversation, not just for leaders, but also for the developers. Everyone, all the people in the teams, again, in the leadership, were using exactly the same language. So when they wanted to prioritize something that was affecting our customers, they would use something like this. So it was a huge change in the daily interactions and conversations within the team dynamics. But there was a downside. The downside is that this data is a few hours delay. So you can have very good conversation about what to prioritize next, but it was not possible for you as a team to use this in real time. So for instance, imagine you wanted to push a change code into prod. You can do that, but you cannot use this dashboard because it has these hours of delay. So we needed something different. We needed something that could allow teams to operate using this concept of FCI, but in real time, right? It wasn't enough to have hours delayed. Now, this is the moment when we introduced the Grafana Cloud stack. This is the moment when we also had to migrate to a different solution that we had at that time. And that's a story in itself. Imagine we migrated everything. And at some point, one of the things that we did was to create basically the same idea of the FCI, but now using metric collections. Now, all the data in this case was generated by the different services, and all the different services were sending data of the failed customer interaction that were happening on that particular artifact or service. So what you see here and to the left, upper left, is that you can select the different data. In this case, it's the environment. We have the exact same data for all the different environments. You can select a time span, and you can also select the action name that you want to look. Right? In this case, is one action name related to the two-factor authentication, the login process. So when you see here different bars, the green bars represent the success request, the red bars, the failures, and the line between is the ratio, right? Now, you as a team, imagine you could use this exactly for the problem that I mentioned before. You could deploy a new change into the 2FA service login. Yes, and you could see if that change resulted in a failure, for instance. You could see a huge red bar, and you can react immediately and roll that change back. So that was one of the main benefits of using the same FCI concept now in Grafana. Now, the question is this enough for a team to operate a given service or an application? And the answer is, it is good, but it's not enough. And the reason is that there was no clear, there wasn't a clear way or to answer for the team is if the size of those red bars were okay or not. I mean, is it 1.50% something that it's okay, or it's not okay? It's bad, and I need to do something about this. And it's not possible to see or to answer those kind of questions here. So there was the next level for us was to actually introduce the SLO as an essential way to manage the reliability of the different services. What you see here, this is the Grafana SLO section. We have this for many of the different services that we have today. And you can see the time window for that SLO, the target, basically the same data here of success and failures request. And then on the left, if there was any critical or warning alert. Now, what I want you to see here is this. If you look into this, it's basically, in this case, the same action name for the link that I showed you before. Remember this? The detector link. So we have this panel, this same information for all the interactions that we have. In this case, this is the link. And in our case, in our website, just on our web channel, it's more than 600 different interactions that we have mapped today. So it was a completely new way of operating, completely new way of defining reliability goals, and to create a new way of managing reliability. Now, after all this journey of realizing that we couldn't detect some basic failures, introducing the FCI, then real-time solution, and at the end of the day, the Grafana SLO, by building one thing on top of the other, these are some of the benefits that we have seen. In our case, the time to detect, which is the time it takes for us between an incident affecting our customers and in our side detecting that failure, was reduced in more than 80% in this about 3 years. Right. This was for all the severity 1 and 2 incidents across all the different squads, right? Like the full entire e-business organization. So I think from an operational perspective, this is one of the most relevant changes that we have seen. Reducing this amount of time is a huge improvement. Now, there was another change. Actually, there was many different improvements, but the second one that I want to show you has to do with something more internal to the teams. Because one of the things that takes energy from people is to be paged at 3 a.m., right? So the noisy alert is a problem that we need to address somehow. And after teams have adopted this new wave of operating the different services that result in an alert system based on their budget, we have seen more than 60% reduction in noisy alerts. That is also a huge improvement. And not all the teams are already doing this, but the ones moving from the traditional approach to the new approach, I've seen a reduction of this amount. Now, something else that I want to share with you, you can try to build capabilities. You can try to offer an SLO capability, right, for your team so they can better operate their services. But it's not just enough to give them the ability to do this by clicking on the UI, for instance. So you need to connect the ecosystem of tools and practices and processes that you may have. In our case, we have many different tools in place already at that time. Something that we call Starter Kit, which is basically a skeleton for the different applications, when you can have access to the repo and a given, in a specific part of that repo, you can define all the different SLOs and batches and all the data that you may need. And you as a developer, when you have access to that in your environment, as soon as you push a change, imagine to your repo, we have the CI/CD tools and processes take that data from that, and depending on the changes that the CI/CD process see on your repo, we can interact with Grafana, the Grafana API, and we make all the different changes as we need to IRM, to SLO, and all of this is fully automated and connected. Same idea when you are deploying a change in your application, imagine. Same idea, the application has a library built in that helps the teams to gather all the different telemetry that they need, and this data is also pulled by the Grafana stack. So all of this is connected, and the message that I want to share with you is that you have to think about how to simplify the process, not just provide capabilities, you also have to provide an easy way to get them to use them. Now, all of these are different changes and the impact that we have seen so far, but what about the future? What are we trying to do? What is our next step? And for us, I mentioned before that the improvement was on our time to detect, right? But every time we have an incident, we split those incidents into 3 different times. One is time to detect. The other one is time to acknowledge, which is the time it takes for us to arrange meetings and call different people. And then when we're already working on fixing that, it is the time to repair. So it's the third phase of the process. And we have seen an improvement. It's a 23% reduction. And it's okay, but for us, it's not enough. We believe that we can, I wouldn't say easily, but we think we can get and cut this bar by half. I mean, reduce this even another 50% further. Right? So this is the challenge that we have, one of the challenges that we have. Now, how we expect to make these changes? We see three main levers here. One thing is back using the same idea of the application and the observability stack or the observability backend is at the application level. This is a place that we can improve the way how we generate data, how we generate the different telemetry, but not just the how we create that telemetry, but how is it correlated, right? Today, it's not fully correlated. We have some data that is correlated, but some other telemetry data is not. So one thing is we can simplify how teams can correlate the data, so it's pretty easy in the future to move from metrics, logs, and tracing, right? That's pretty much the idea. The other one is that we have an ecosystem of tools that is more complex than what we want, and it is to simplify this experience. As soon as you have data, right, and that data is pulled from the application and it's already within the observability backend, how easy it is for the developers to move within that data, right? How you can visually move from metrics to log to traces, and how you can connect visually all this data. Today, we have more things that what we want, what we would like to have. So to streamline this developer workflow is the second thing, the second lever that we see. And now the third one, and I think this is the most important one, it is that many of the teams that we have today tend to think in observability like at the end of the process. And we see that there's a huge impact that we can create if we introduce the observability-driven development approach. So start thinking in how to observe your application, your service, and your customers before or at the moment you start designing, building, testing, and deploying your applications. So that's the third approach that we want to follow. Now, we've seen a few teams doing this. Actually, a few teams doing this, but the moment we saw people drawing things like this, it wasn't an actual draw that someone did from a given team. We thought that there was hope of improving this observability-driven development, right? Teams doing this like by hand, I know it's pretty, maybe it's not a beauty diagram, but anyway, it was a team that we saw drawing this at the moment they were thinking on the new feature, new capability that they wanted to build. So we have seen these signs, we have seen teams doing this, so we hope we can help all of the rest of the teams to have exactly the same practice in a daily basis. Now, one last thing that I want to share with you, the key takeaway for me is that the focus has to be in the customers always. As soon as you focus on your customers, all the rest of the tool, all the rest of the practices, all the rest of the technical stuff you may need will follow. Thank you.